Good morning. So, what we're talking about today, you hired good people. So why does everything feel harder? This is the final conversation of Founder Conversations with Anthony, Sutton and I, and we are unpacking what happens when businesses grow faster than leadership structures. We'll be discussing performance culture, leadership maturity, and why scaling a team without scaling leadership is often where things start to break. I'm Annique. I'm a marketing hire and onboarding consultant, and I help founders avoid expensive marketing hiring mistakes. And I'm joined by Anthony.
Good morning. I can't believe it's the last in the series. It's incredible. But morning, everyone. I'm Anthony. I run an HR consultancy, and we help businesses get the best out of the most important investment they ever make, which is their people. So it's scaling businesses without breaking them is the general idea today, isn't it? So we'll try and look at what goes wrong and how to avoid some costly mistakes, and hopefully fit a few stories of our experiences in there along the way. So I guess we've talked a lot about hiring and the importance of clarity within the organization, but scaling is one of the things that, of course, a lot of businesses face with great excitement. But more people in the business doesn't necessarily automatically mean more growth within the business. And I guess we want to sort of discuss what changes in a business when you go from a handful of people or a small team to starting to grow into a more significant entity and recruiting new people, and perhaps people you've not met before, so they don't come from that circle that you know, and what goes wrong. So what sort of things have you experienced, Annique, in terms of seeing businesses that have gone from a small group who know one another very well to starting to grow, and what sort of dynamics change in that environment?
Well, from what I see, especially when businesses take on marketing, they hire a marketer and they expect them to slot into the existing culture and processes and the ways of working that's already there. But as with like many hires, this needs to be structured slightly differently. So I worked with one company, and they generally believe that like teamwork was actually a quarterly event. Like they had this quarterly.
Say that again. Seriously?
Yeah, teamwork was a quarterly event. So they had like a day where all the team got together. And then they talk about collaboration and alignment like as one team. But when you actually got down to the nitty-gritty and the day-to-day, sales and marketing had a weekly meeting, but it was essentially who's who in the customer pipeline, and where they were, what the blockers were and stuff like that. But there wasn't any discussion about how marketing can support that, what marketing can do differently to help the people through the funnel. It was very much just like, this X client is there, I spoke to them on this day, this was the outcome, I'm contacting them again on that day, and that was it. It's like marketing was very passive in that meeting, and there wasn't the desire for it to change, for it to be any different. And it was similar in their kind of, they had product and customer service meeting like once a week, and it was all about product changes so that customer services could understand them, and product updates that had been made because of niggles and like complaints that had come from clients. That both things are great, but marketing was just there as a spectator. there wasn't actually input into how marketing can support like the product communication, how they could support customer services, like getting over the issues that clients were having. Like marketing was just expected to sit there and absorb. So although they'd taken on a marketer, the structure was like really inflexible to actually help support that marketer and help the marketer support the growth of the business. And at one point, they suggested having direct working relationship with customer services rather than just a reporting meeting, but an actual proper conversation where they discover what customers are asking, what they're struggling with, what objections are coming up repeatedly, what language the customers are using, because all that information is like gold for marketers. But they didn't want that. They didn't want marketing to have like that direct access to customer services. They wanted customer services to operate and to use AI to support their communication, which wasn't kind of marketing led. And that's kind of where the problems start. A little bit like what we were saying when we were waiting to come onto live. It's like as you grow your business, as you start adding new people and new departments to the business, then the way the business works needs to adjust to support that, because a business with 3 people is going to need very different processes and very different collaboration structure than a business with 30. So it needs to adapt and change accordingly. And that flexibility needs to be there. Otherwise, it's just going to the hire is just going to fall flat on their face.
Absolutely. I think there's a couple of words that sprung out to me at the early part of your story, which is fascinating, by the way. I can't believe that so many silos could exist in such a small place. But there's a bit of, I guess, an expectation, obviously, from the new hires that you're scaling. There's the excitement that goes with, we're bringing these people on board, this thing's stuff happening and it's going to happen. So there's that expectation, but there's also an assumption, isn't there? There's sort of this assumption that because you've been in this small group, of course you'll understand what we expect you to do because we all know what we're doing. And it's sort of this blind spot that's leaders and founders have in those early stages, which can really cause some serious disconnects and some issues. So we'll come on to some of the fixes, but I guess that I also would imagine then manifests itself in becoming quite a toxic environment, and the fact that you'll have quite a lot of blame going. I guess the new person in will be the new people in will be the ones where the fingers are pointing. We recruited you and it hasn't worked, and you then start really changing the culture within the organisation. And before we were live, you and I were talking about the fact that I'm not a fiend for process in any way, shape, or forms. It's always about culture for me, but you do have to have structure behind that to make sure you keep the culture alive. There are things you have to do to make sure it works, and that sort of assumption that a leader has or a founder has that these people are going to sort of be the fix and we're going to suddenly massively grow as a result of that needs a set of real leadership qualities that you may not think you need to possess in that early stage of your growth. And I would imagine that's one of the things that we really need to look at, is how those founders and leaders in the organization need to look at themselves to ensure that they embed senior leadership qualities into a business, even when it's very early stage. I mean, they still need to be very present, and they still need to they need to direct the ship, as it were, and where it's going to go, and feed the inputs, because the structure and support that finance need is very different to customer service, which is very different again to developers, which is very different to like sales and marketing.
and that needs to be accounted for in a business when you're scaling. Because I mean, the person you hire can be like absolutely amazing, but if the culture isn't there to create the framework to support the role, then it doesn't matter how good you are, it's not gonna work.
No, and I'm glad you mentioned finance, because one of the things that obviously resonates here is that there's an investment. People are normally the biggest cost in any organization, so there's also that invested money that the organization, at, I'm guessing, relatively early stages made, or at least small stage, doesn't have to be early, but at that smaller stage is made. And if that then doesn't start producing results, that again increases a sort of a level of pressure within the business in terms of the expectations and the stresses within the organization, and how everything starts fraying around the edges, and people start to really sort of fall out, I guess, over the lack of results within an organization when we've spent all this money on all of these people.
Yeah, no, exactly. And you used a key word there, that they're an investment. I think when it comes to accounting terms, they're put down as a cost, but you can't look at people like that. You need to look at them as an investment. If you're just looking at them as a cost, then you're approaching it from entirely the wrong angle. You've got the wrong mindset about it. When you take somebody on board, you want them to be there long term. You don't want to be training somebody new in 6 months or a year again. You want them, you're investing your time and your money to take them on, so you need to take that time as well to invest in to make sure the structure is there to support them, because otherwise they will just leave in 6 months to a year.
Absolutely, but it's interesting because traditionally, people have always simply sat in that cost column. It goes back, years and years and years of finance and accounting and the way you account for people, and it is an important mindset shift. I think it's, again, there's some clear messages we want to get across for the whole series, and that absolute understanding that people are not a cost, they are an investment, and they are a really important investment. So if you're going to invest in them, invest correctly, so do the right things. I guess that the one of the lines you referenced a while ago when we were talking was, growth doesn't break the business at that early stage, but poor leadership can. But growth will, the people and the growth bit will be the bit that the poor leaders blame for the failure. Whereas actually this is really about looking in the mirror yourselves and saying, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to make sure we're ready and we step up to the plate to get it right. Otherwise, it could be a real disaster. And going on to your specific area of marketing, this is also one of those great areas where hiring specialists is often seen as, we've brought in X from this wonderful place that we've always held in such high regard, and they're going to solve all of our problems. So you've then got this mindset of we've found the magician to turn what we're doing into gold. And then again, if we don't have that real leadership being displayed by the founders, it can be an absolute disaster.
Yeah, and I think what you've just said there highlights the kind of like one of the hidden challenges of growing a small team, because you're hiring specialists, you're expecting them to come in and do the work, and but one of the things that's often forgotten about is the structure and the foundation that needs to be done before that specialist comes in. So an internal audit is often a good way of doing that, and just going, right, okay, we've got this new person coming in, what is it they're going to need from us? What is it they're going to need from us? What is it they're going to need from like other people within the company, and how can we facilitate that?
Yeah, and I think that aspect is so important, because there's an expectation on an expert, if you like, that's slightly different. So if you're hiring numbers into a team, and I don't mean to be disparaging about those, but the people who are going to, if you like, do a lot of the work within that environment, But if you're hiring the leader or the person that's coming in to be the head of, so you're growing, you've got a plan to recruit a number of people, and actually we've decided to bring in someone that as a head of marketing, and we find a real expert. It's that bit, the goes back to the first point. There's an expectation that they're going to be great because they just know what they're doing. They've been there, they've seen it, they've done it all before, so it's bound to work. And that's not how life works. It's not a switch that you can just say, oh yeah, you can plug into here now, you'll work absolutely fine. It needs that real work from the leadership team to make sure that they do put that planning in place beforehand.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Annie.
No, I was going to say, like, to bring it into a not real world, but bring it into terms that lots of people might relate to, is like what I was telling you about off screen. My husband and I, about 8 years ago, we were an amazing team. We worked really well together. We had each other's backs, even though we were both going through like difficult times. We were there. We had each other's backs. And then we had our son, and obviously that adds another member to the team. We had our son. We had different priorities. We had I'm building a business. He's got a job. We're managing the various different things within our family and other things within our life. So, and we've got our son and everything our son's doing. So what we're managing is different, and how we work together needs to change. It's different to how it was like years ago. So as a leadership team dealing with all this stuff, we need to change what we're doing and how we communicate, because even though as individuals we've not changed, the demands on our time and like the number in our team has. So it's something that we've actually looked at recently. So we're making sure that we're communicating everything and like nothing's falling through the trap. And I think people can relate to that because life changes, life evolves, and you need to adapt accordingly. And it's the same in businesses. It's no different.
It is. It's absolutely the same. There's a really good parallel in terms of just a very different scenario because it's life and it's family, but it absolutely is the same thing. And businesses are like a family. When certainly that early stage, founding a business and you've got a small team, it feels like that. And that's also, I guess, one of the challenges you have is it always feels like a family. Everyone knows what it's going to be. So you all know how we're going to do this stuff, and bringing someone new in, they'll just fit in, they'll get it, it's dead easy. It's not how it works. It's got to revolve around people having real clear expectations, clear understanding of what they're, because when you do, the number of times I've heard people say, oh, we recruited such and such, they were meant to be brilliant, and they were actually rubbish. And of course they weren't rubbish. They probably are really, really excellent. It's what they've landed in that either wasn't ready for them or just didn't have that real clarity of what you're here to do, and then provide the support and the feedback and the communication internally to make sure we ironed out those glitches along the way. You've made me think, actually, what there's the nice thing about this is people can learn. I think that's also one of the skills of a founder. Is some founders will go through a bad growth phase and possibly stop and say, actually, I don't want to do that again. It was dreadful. It nearly killed the business. So we're just going to keep ourselves like this, and that's fine. And obviously, life is all about lessons, and every day you learn new things. And a client of mine who early stage in the business definitely made one of those wrong specialist hires, and a very important one that didn't work. But they got over that hump, and then I remember a short period later had a completely different sort of plan. Literally would then came to me and said, okay, we've got the next 18 months planned out now in terms of our growth plans. We know exactly where we need people. We know exactly what we're looking for. And it was really detailed. That doesn't mean it didn't change and morph, because the business grows in all sorts of different ways as you're going along the journey. It's not linear, and it's not going to go in the way you necessarily planned, but their mindset had changed dramatically from or almost, we've got this opportunity to hire this wonderful person, to actually go, let's look at what we need and look at what we actually need as a business to hit these targets, to hit our goals and our objectives, and what is it that goes in to make that happen. And I think that was one of the really satisfying from my experience, was just seeing somebody who just say, wow, you've actually now started to demonstrate really good leadership within the organization. You've brought the team together to work everything out. So I guess I hadn't planned that, but that leads us on nicely to, how do we make sure we get this right, and what are the things you'd look for within a founder's business to say, these, we are ready to start growing? What sort of things would you look at and say, yeah, you're starting to get in the right place and you can do this well?
Yeah, it's one of the things I say all the time. Like I'm sure I bore people with it, but it's clearly defined business goals. So what are your business goals? Where do you want to take your business? Which areas do you want to grow your business? Like looking at specific revenue streams, specific products, like geographical areas, target audience, like client retention. Like which specific business goals do you have? Like, rather than, I want to grow my business by $1 million in the next year. I mean, yeah, that's great, but what does that $1 million actually translate into, like, physically? So it's like really getting clear and understanding your business goals. And I think the second one is, you touched on it a moment ago, defining responsibilities. Who is responsible what, even down to the leadership team. If it's a founder and you are responsible for like steering the business and taking on the hires, then the responsibility sits with you. But if you have other people within the leadership team, what are their responsibilities? Define the responsibilities, and define the responsibilities of the people that you're taking on board, the responsibilities and what they own, what decisions that they own. So kind of really getting clear on that. Consistent communication rhythms. So have weekly leadership meetings, have weekly interdepartmental meetings. I worked for a company once, and we had a stand up and a stand up, sit down, stand up at the beginning of the week, and kind of like a sit down to close off the week. And at the beginning of the week, it was just like, this is what I'm working on this week. This is what I'm working on. This is where I need support. This is where I can see blockers coming up, and I might need support from you, and you. So kind of like having from department heads or however many people you've got in the team, maybe it's everybody that you've got that working for you. Like, what are you working on that week? And then at the end, what has been the wins? What has been the wins? What has been the blockers to go into like the next week? And like who helped you, or where do you need help from? So that was kind of like a really nice thing to do. It was a small company, so like as I mentioned just then, small companies, you can afford to have everybody there. When you get bigger, then you're going to need like a representative from each department. But having consistent communication rhythms which are collaborative. Decision ownership I've touched on, and the other thing is that each team understands how success is measured, because obviously it's going to be slightly different for each team. If you've got product development team, they're going to have different success measures than marketing, than customer support and finance. So it's like really understanding what those success measures are.
You made me think of something really important when you were talking about the sort of clarity of responsibilities, because that becomes one of the really difficult things as the founder, I find, is that you can get the definition, we can have everything agreed in terms of who's doing what, but everything still needs to go through me. And that sort of real, it's my baby, I want to see everything. So you've sort of given the plan and the grand idea that everyone's free, they've got their responsibilities, but actually not without me. And I think that's it's probably one of the hardest things as a founder to actually get your head around and to let go of, is letting go of responsibility and trusting that people can do this without you and it shouldn't go through you. I guess that's a real sign that you're not ready if you still have an organization that everything channels through one or two people.
Yes, yeah, no, exactly. I mean, if you take somebody on, you're delegating. And if you're suddenly saying, no, well, I'm taking you on board, so I'm kind of delegating this to you, but I need you to come back to me with everything. That's not true delegation. And there's another thing, it's like defining responsibilities. It's like properly defining the responsibilities and your expectations around them, because there's making sure that there's no gray area, because oftentimes when I talk to clients, it's just like I've spoken to clients before, and they've hired marketing and they're like, well, they didn't deliver what I expected. They came on and they did this and this, and they looked busy, but I wasn't getting the growth I was looking for. They weren't doing what I was expected. And I was just like, well, did you communicate that? I was like, well, no, but I expected them to know. And so there's that gap there. There's like expectations around what people do, with unspoken expectations. So it's kind of getting rid of that, and making sure like their priorities are clear.
Yeah, and there's that letting go again is a real parallel to parenting. It's that sort of, how does your child know if something's hot? They actually do have to burn their hand or whatever sometimes to understand when I say don't touch that, there's a reason, and there's that learning you do. I guess the other thing that it could go into a much longer session is also the bit of, this is real self-reflection. So smart founders get the fact that actually at some point they need to move out. So their role we need to bring someone in who's better than me at being CEO, or better than me at whatever. So this is also a really massive part of leadership, is self-reflection, maturity, emotional intelligence, if you like, in terms of being able to realize that, okay, when we were 5 people, it was fine with me doing this and I was taking the lead, but actually now we're 20 people or 30 people, I'm not the best person to do this anymore. I need to do this because my expertise is in this area, which is why we have this wonderful product or this wonderful service. And that's maybe where I need to be, but actually to drive the business, we now need someone different. And that's a real step change, and a big step for most founders to take and to get their head around, but it's a massive step in terms of success and guaranteeing longer term success, however you measure that.
No, completely, 100%. And it's the definition of success. If you don't have clearly defined definition of success of like any of the roles, then you're not ready. I don't think. If your teams are still operating in silos and they're not talking to each other, I think that's also a sign that you're not ready to scale. And if you're constantly firefighting, I think that's also a sign that you're not ready to scale, because you're too reactive. Whereas if you want to scale, you want to be proactive. You want to be ahead of everything, rather than trying to put out fires in different places. So yes, there's
and that's
a lot to it.
There is, and again, it's that really understanding your role as the leader, isn't it? And it's It's maturity, it's growing up as a business and realizing that, okay, if we want to achieve whatever it is we want to achieve, that's the time when you need to start being really honest. And as you said, get into a lot more real clarity around detail, responsibilities, who's doing what, where, genuinely letting go of those things, being there to provide support logically, but not being that interferer, and creating an environment where people work together as part of the team. They know exactly what they're meant to do. They can have disagreements, but then get together to iron those out, to work on the solutions we need. So again, it's that sense of, it isn't the growth that's going to kill the business, it's the poor leadership within that growth that's going to cause the problems. But if you actually do start leading well as a small business, that you can grow really successfully and really start to see that acceleration and change the whole dynamic of your organization.
Yeah. And I think if you're a founder out there and you're thinking, I'm not ready to let go, that's completely understandable. And there are lots of things that I need to start thinking about letting go of that I'm not sure I'm ready to let go of within my business yet. It's your baby, you've grown it, you've built it, it's completely understandable. There are people out there that can help you let go and help you, like, hold the space for you while you take these people on board and you start letting go, because I think that is one of the biggest things as a founder.
I couldn't agree more. I've been there, been through it, remember it well, and it's always hard to let go, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Exactly. And on that note, I think the founder conversations that we've had have been incredibly rewarding for me. It's been a pleasure chatting to you over the last few weeks or few months, Anthony, doing these. I've really enjoyed them. I hope everybody else has really enjoyed them too, and you've got a lot out of it. As always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to drop us a note.
I've absolutely loved it, Annique. Thank you very much for inviting me to join you on these. I hope I hope everyone who's listened to it has got something out of it. And really always happy to answer any questions.